All right, today I'd like to talk to you. This is going to be a fairly brief press conference, but I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my background, and then I have a media packet for folks that have the position statements that I'm going to be talking about today, and each month I'm going to release more position statements, so stay tuned. I have run for governor before, and back in 2002. So I know what's ahead of me, and I tell my friends behind me, you know, it's a long, hard road. Sometimes it's kind of lonely, but it is definitely, the greatest thing about it is you get to travel the entire state. And the first time I did it, I spent 2 years traveling the state. This time will be a year to the primary, a little bit more than that, and then on to the general. So a lot of good times ahead. I'll be certain not to miss the Blueberry Festival, that's for sure. I am looking for a job, I guess, running for a governor, but I have a job. So I tell a lot of people, you know, I'm actually very happy working as a college professor and a former dean, and I've taken a lot of time to really work at my craft at Thomas College and make that college better, and I've been there for 23 years. I've also worked full-time for Colby College. I've worked full-time for St. Joseph's College. I've worked full-time for Sanford High School as a math teacher. I've been a college basketball coach. I've been a high school basketball coach here in Maine. I've run hoop basketball camp in Casco as a director. I've run my own small book business. I've written 4 books. I've got 4 college degrees, including a PhD. And I've had 4 terms in the Senate and 2 in the House. I really feel like through all of this at the age of 64 that I'm ready to not just run, but to win. And it's worth winning. And the reason I say that is because we have to turn this state around. And what you'll notice, I think, most about my candidacy is that it really does take the state in a different direction than what we are currently doing. And I really enjoy and appreciate my role as a state senator, but I just want you to know that it's been tough the last couple of terms. Most of the time when I vote, things get turned down, and I don't win the vote. And neither do my colleagues. And what I remember from the 1990s is a little bit more of a collegial atmosphere where the Republicans and the Democrats work together. And I think it's really important to state that I'll be pushing for that. One of the things that is in this press packet that I'll bring up now just before I get started on issues is that the veto power that the governor has is a really important piece of what the governor does. And I was fortunate enough to serve in the Maine House under John McKernan. And the one thing I loved about Governor McKernan is that he would always threaten the veto. In fact, he vetoed 100 pieces of legislation. And only on the very last one, the 100th, did he get overridden. And the thing about vetoes is not about, oh, I don't want this to happen. The threat of the veto forces the two parties to come together and have to work together because they know that that's there. And so one of the things that I'm going to promise in my trips around the state and talking to the media and the people behind me and all people from all walks of life in Maine is that we're going to find a new way to work together. And it's irregardless of my basically relatively conservative principles, I don't care about that. And it's not about me, it's about the state of Maine, it's about all of us working together. And so I'm really I'm focused on that. I want to talk a little bit then about some of these policy positions. I'm going to read some of them off. I'm only going to be able to cover a few of them today. But I'm going to start with economic development because that's what I'm best known as. In the 6.5 years that I worked at Colby, I worked as an economist, and I went around the state giving speeches and, you know, not just conducting, but delivering research on how our economy was working here in Maine, and it's been a tough go. The first thing I want you to know is that energy development equals economic development. And it's going to start with that. Energy development equals economic development. So what does that mean? Well, especially with energy generation. Right now, those that are in office are assuming that the only way to go is wind and solar. And while you'll get help in wind and solar from me, if you make that the only way to go, it guarantees that our economy will not do well. And there's no reason why we should do that. I've been a big fan of natural gas, and natural gas is gas-fired plants are serving up between 30 and 40% of our energy, and we need more of it. Why? Because on the supply side, we can really push down prices if we allow that kind of generation to take place. I also like to talk Maine is a big part of the world. I love where we're positioned geographically, but some things concern me nationally. Many of you know that China, for example, is developing currently 30 nuclear plants. And we in Maine are not. In fact, if you look at the entire United States, you've got one plant being developed in Georgia and a couple of other plants that are coming online specifically in partnership with businesses. We're going to look at nuclear power. We're not going to rule it out. It's a long-term proposition, but one of the things that has especially interested me is that we have an aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford, and on that aircraft carrier are the newest and latest portable, modular nuclear generators. And it's amazing how that creates, it's not just a power around the world it creates, it draws investment to us. It draws investment to us. You have to have good, reliable sources of energy in order to draw investment. And it's been my feeling in the 2 terms that I've returned to the legislature after having 22 years off raising my family, it's been noticeable that we don't seem to be inviting investment to come to the state of Maine, and we really do. So what you'll see from me is a lot of work with the DECD, the Department of Economic and Community Development. That is a forward-thinking group. It's one of the best functioning groups. We just got a brand new commissioner, and he's a fantastic commissioner. I'm looking forward to perhaps getting in and reappointing him. Mike Duguay and others who really are experts in their field. Look him up and look at his background, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. We're going to start a tax incentives program for investment out of the DECD, and I've made sure that I detailed that in here, so take a look if you would. Another issue that's, I think, important to Maine business right now that really has thrown cold water on investment in Maine is the paid family leave program. My intention is to continue the paid family leave program, but to try to craft it and make it more like the state of New Hampshire, where it's really a state-sponsored voluntary insurance program, and it's a far safer, better functioning opportunity for a win-win, and we really need that. Finally, before I leave this, I have to tell you this is one that'll be somewhat controversial. During my 4 years, we are not going to have automatic increases in the minimum wage. The minimum wage is important. It's a program we're all familiar with, but we're also familiar with the fact that New Hampshire offers a minimum wage that is less than half what we do. And what has happened in the state of Maine is we've lost a lot of businesses, especially in hospitality and restaurant. We simply can't stand around and allow that to happen. I'm not saying we're going to roll back the minimum wage, because I wouldn't do that. But to freeze it for a period, allow businesses to be able to know and predict, be able to carry out their business plans, know and predict what the increases will be, because there won't be any, and leave it at the current level, which is I believe is the 5th highest in the nation. More on energy. I'm going to start with a ratepayer first plan, and that I mentioned support for natural gas infrastructure and power generation in Maine, but we are no longer going to play favorites with, for example, the solar farms that are really all over this state. They're there. We have them. We can take advantage of them, but that program has to end because, unfortunately, in the contracts themselves, we are paying out-of-state developers twice the wholesale rate. We can't keep doing that. Maine ratepayers are in a really difficult circumstance between all of the wide array of taxation that we have in the state, property taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, and one of the most onerous taxes in any of the states, our excise tax. Go buy a car and find out what happens to you. We need to start thinking a little bit more about taxpayers. I'll get back to that. Let me talk quickly about education. I'm going to list off a few things. I'm a career educator, and I've been a dean, run a college, really had great opportunities over the years and feel like I know the system better than anybody. I wrote a book called Super U. It's the history and politics of the University of Maine system, and a lot of trustees will call me and ask for that book. I feel like I'm ready to help with education, and as you know, we've gone from, in the 1990s when I was in the legislature as a young person, we've gone from one of the top 5 states in terms of scores on testing to the bottom 5 states, and that just can't continue. We need to take a look at that. So here are some things that I'm going to be supporting. We're going to contract with higher education institutions like the University of Maine and offer improved training programs for our teachers around the state. We're going to upgrade the State Board of Education. We're going to ask them to be tougher on the institutional approval process for higher education, particularly for teacher training. We're going to improve AI-enhanced analytical reasoning skills in Maine, and we are going to work on AI across the curriculum. We're going to address chronic absenteeism, and we're going to do case audits of schools to make sure that we get to the bottom of why students are absent 50, 60, 70 days in a year. That cannot continue. We're going to raise minimum standards for high school graduation. I'm not going to be able to go into too much detail, but it's in my packet here. I guess the one thing that I would bring up is that, did you know that we have 2 years of high school math required in Maine? Massachusetts is 4. And I've been working hard on that issue. I think we're going to be able to raise it to 3 this year because the bill that I introduced seems to be winding its way through the process. But we've got a lot more work to do there. I'm going to keep a promise. All of the Maine lottery proceeds will go directly to education and be dedicated revenue. That is what we were told. I realize it was a long time ago. We're also going to establish a first-year promise program, which means that instead of the community colleges being singled out as a source of funds, a use of funds, and students getting free community college, we're going to start a first-year program out of FAME, out of the Maine grant program, a first-year program for students so that they can choose where they want to go. A lot of students end up in the community college system, and the community college system is great. I was a trustee of the community college system. I've hated my position being opposed to funding for the community colleges. I've hated it. But think about this for a minute. Why would we, so many parents are sending their children to community colleges when in reality they want to go on for a baccalaureate degree? Why would we encourage one thing over another? It doesn't make policy-wise, it just doesn't make sense. So we're going to work on that. I think one of the things that you'll be interested in is my tax policy. I am going to take the first 4 years while I'm in office and $250 million per year for a total of $1 billion, and we're going to have income tax relief. $1 billion over 4 years of income tax relief. And that's not an easy thing to pull off, but if you look at the growth of the Maine budget, and you think about, the $11.5 million budget that we're going to end up with, billion-dollar budget that we're going to end up with this year, there's definitely room for $250 million a year to be put towards income tax relief. And I've got the details for you in this packet. I hope you'll take a look. We're going to, if we're not already, we're going to remove ourselves from the National Popular Vote Compact. Looking at good government issues now. We're going to strengthen government oversight. The Government Oversight Committee is going to have more power. We're going to repeal ranked choice voting. We're going to find a way to repeal ranked choice voting. Thank you. Thousands and thousands of Mainers complain about the fact that you need a strategy when you have to walk in and cast your vote, and that it's confusing and difficult, and it takes too long to count the votes. There are just a lot of reasons why. Good idea. I don't disagree with the fact that, it's, when you have a plurality, it is what it is. But I'm not afraid of that, and it's in the Maine Constitution that when you run for governor, you only need a plurality. I think it's implied that all of our races, because of that, should be a plurality. I'm going to start some programs to protect our outdoor heritage and our outdoor resources. Some of it maybe a little bit offbeat and a little bit interesting, but we're going to have a covered bridge program. We're going to have, out of the DOT, we're going to have a covered bridge program. We're going to establish some covered bridges. We're going to improve shoreline access. We're going to work on bike paths and walking. And you may have seen this morning, well, I'm talking to the news media, so you did see this morning a story on how many people have lost their lives in the last year from being hit by cars. And when I think about my current district, includes the town of Sebago. If you go to the town of Sebago from here, what you'll see is a very two wide collars, very wide road, Route 114, turn into this. The narrowest, you can imagine where all the population is. It's just not safe. And I think that safety has to come first, so we're going to really work on that. While we continue to work on transportation-related carbon emissions. I love hybrid. I love hybrid. Transportation, there's a couple of issues that are different than maybe what you've seen in the legislature. I support cargo rail, and I also support passenger rail. So, thank you. There's a very large couple of coalitions actually that I work with, and I believe in what they're doing. I don't think they're off the rails. Having worked in Waterville for so many years now, we're a college town. We've got Colby College, Thomas College, KVCC. There's also some private schools around that area. I would like to see at least some limited rail that is passenger rail coming up through Waterville, and I know people want it in Bangor as well. We'll look at the cost of that, and we'll try to be very supportive of that. I also want to strengthen rural airports. All right, so all in all, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. There's a lot more in my packet. You'll get more each month because there are some areas that I haven't been able to cover. These are my early priorities. The most important thing is that I haven't said is that if there are tax increases this year, and you've seen all the proposals, download taxes, and it looks like that may or may not go, but taxes to plug holes, we're going to really work on making sure that any tax that is added to this budget will be put toward, any of the revenue that comes from it will be put toward tax reduction in the future. Every single dollar of that new revenue that's driven. Now, how are we going to pay for some of this stuff? AI will help us from a management standpoint of the agency structure. AI will help us. AI will help make employees 5 to 10 times more productive than they currently are. And some of you I know have already worked with AI, and you've seen how much more you can do. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. So this whole idea that the state government should be expanding jobs at the rate that we're expanding those jobs doesn't make sense at all, and it really hurts the Maine taxpayer. So I'll be looking for economies. I'm not the kind of person that likes to fire people, even though I fired people before. We've gone through the whole process, 3-step process, that sort of thing. I don't like doing that, and I won't do that in state government. We're going to work through attrition, and we're going to try to slowly work on the size of government. We've got too many employees in state government, and for some reason, we've decided we're going to add some this year. So that's an important piece. The other thing I think that is that's in here that people always ask about cost savings, and I'll try to make this the final thing. We need to reform general assistance, and I am not afraid to reform the Maine care system. The Maine care system works like this, and breaking it all down in a very simple way. Maine care has a lower reimbursement rate for all the providers. So if you get Maine care, in some cases, you're a second-class citizen. Now, why would I say that? Because there's no law that says the provider needs to even give you access to the services that you need. And what happens? A hospital that gets reimbursed, and of course in Maine we've got around 400,000 people on Maine care. In New Hampshire they've got about 186,000 people on Maine care. And they've got more people in New Hampshire than we have here in Maine. So here's the way the system works. We give a low rate of reimbursement. We've expanded the amount of people that are on Maine care. So, and those rates are fixed. So where do the price hikes go? To the private pays. So it's a vicious cycle. And the private pays, of course, the price is very high for medical care. So we have to break that down. Now, am I going to throw people off Medicaid? No, I'll work with the administration on working to make sure that people who, and Republicans say this a lot, and I agree with this, people who are single, who are able to work, who are working, we'll work with them on a case-by-case basis, and we'll try to slowly transit them into private insurance. Maine has some subsidized insurance programs. It may start there, and then we slowly do that. But we need to get the number down. It needs to be below 300,000 in terms of the enrollees. It has to be. We cannot continue to make sure or assure that our state will be full of people without resources. I can't imagine that. And for all that you hear from the president, this is the one thing that I'm going to say that's kind of like what President Trump has said. We are going to experience golden years here in the state of Maine. We're going to experience golden years. All right, I'd like to take some questions, and then when we need to move on, I've got some time in the legislature today that I got to run up there and cast a few votes. Do you have any questions?
This is obviously a crowded field.
It is, Jackie.
So far.
Yeah.
Tell me about why 2026 is the year that you felt like it was important to throw your hat in the ring again.
I think just the general direction of government. That's really, I feel like I've had the wherewithal and the combination of skills and just the policy decisions that I try to make are what Mainers want. And I think that they've become frustrated. They've grown frustrated with the current system, and I'm going to reach out to them. And I don't expect to be, popular among 100% of Mainers, but what I will tell them, if they're considering me, is that I'm going to take the long-term view. It's not going to be, well, today I'm going to, we're going to share a program with you, and we're going to give you this support. Well, yeah, we might do that, but tomorrow we're going to make sure that you experience the joy that comes with working and being a part of the community, raising a family, and owning a home. That you have to take a long-term view. So that's why. That is why. I think I can do that, and I know I can do that.
So you're running, sorry,
Yes.
You're running against some big names, Shanna Bellows, Troy Jackson. What can you bring to the table that they might not be able to bring?
Well, the good thing is I'm only worried about one of them because there'll be a primary. And the primary this year is interesting, isn't it? Because we've got, people that are unenrolled can come in and pick up a Republican ballot if they want to, or a Democrat ballot. I think it'll be interesting to see what the effect of that is. But they're on the left, they've got quite an interesting group. A lot of them are quite a ways to the left. And now that we know that Jared Golden isn't running, because he's not quite a ways to the left, my concern is that there's too many people that are far to the left. And so I'm offering them something completely different. I'm offering them a different direction. I hope that answers your question.
Are you quite a ways to the right, or are you the moderate candidate? Should voters think of you as the moderate Republican?
I take each issue singularly, and sometimes I vote very conservatively on the Second Amendment. I believe in the ability of people to own guns and be able to hunt and fish and do the things that we've always done in the state of Maine, and protect themselves as well. So I'm a big Second Amendment guy. That puts me a little bit conservative on that. But I honestly, if you look at my voting record in the legislature, there's lots of times when I don't think we have the corner on the market of ideas. So you'll see that I voted with Democrats on some education issues, on some human service issues, some issues that haven't made it through. One of the things I hate the most, I'm going to be honest with you, is that in Maine, if you're a senior and you haven't made plans for your property, and then you end up in a home, you're about to lose your property. Your family's about to lose it because you're going to have to use that money to pay for the home that you've been put in. If you're in memory care, for example, and you haven't made those kind of arrangements, and a lot of Mainers haven't, so I've often, that tends to be an issue left of the middle, and so I've tended to be there on that issue. I hope that answers your question. I don't mean to be ambivalent about it all. It's really important. But I have a long record. I think you'll be able to find that.
And what are your views on Maine's abortion laws right now?
Okay. I personally am pro-life, but I honestly have always said, this is none of my business. But when it comes to late-term abortion, if the legislature brought me something on late-term abortion, some kind of restrictions, I would sign that. And that's where I am. I wouldn't go much further than that. I'm not crazy about spending taxpayer money on abortion because some people obviously are convicted, they don't like it. But a ban of all abortion in Maine, I wish I could say that I supported that, but what I'd rather do instead is tell people, I'm working on family and I'm working on faith. Go see your pastor, go see your priest, go see your counselor, get help. I want to be helpful to people that are in need.
Obviously, to get to the general election, you need to win the Republican primary.
Yeah.
And you just kind of said you're issue by issue. How will you get some of those really red Republicans to vote for you in the primary?
I think they'll see that. I think they'll see me as a good CEO. I think that's where it comes from. I'm pro-business. I mean, the reason I'm a Republican is I'm pro-business. And so I've written business plans, and I know how we disrupt them in this state. Disrupting a business is not the job of government. It is disrupting a business is the last thing we should be doing, but we're doing it all the time. And we're making it difficult because we change the cost of doing business so often and by so much, we put businesses in jeopardy. I'm going to be inviting investment like I talked about earlier, and also you'll see that in my packet. I started today with investment in this media packet because it's so important, and that's really what I'm going to be focusing on. Thanks for the question, Jackie.
And I just have one more.
Sure.
Obviously, Title IX and the issue of transgender women participating in girls and women's sports.
Yeah, that's in this packet. Yep,
Yeah.
that's in this packet. I was a women's basketball coach at Thomas College. I was a women's basketball coach at Gorham High School. The 2 years that I was coach, we went to that grand tradition of going to the Civic Center and competing in the playoffs. It is important to state, I guess, that your birth certificate will define where you play, and there's nothing wrong with that. Last night I watched an incredible NBA game. Did you guys see it? It went down to overtime. It was kind of a miracle shot at the end of regulation, right? those were all men. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with all women. However, we need to care about people who do transition, and so we need to find a separate category for them to compete in. And there's no reason why, if you're in a track meet and you have transitioned, there's no reason why you can't compete statewide against other people. There's no reason. So we'll be looking at humane ways of dealing with that, but I'm going to protect girls' sports.
And just off of Jackie's question, what do you make of the Trump administration's actions towards Maine surrounding Title IX, whether it is freezing funds to the USDA, that suit was settled, or suing the Maine Department of Education?
Yeah, I think that our governor has kind of made it clear that she's not really willing to work with President Trump, and so what you're going to get from me is somebody that's willing to work with him. I'm willing to work with President Trump, and as a result, we'll be dropping some lawsuits, and we will be working to bring more help to Maine. And why wouldn't we want to do that? We currently, anyway, have Susan Collins in a position where, you know, we can bring some resources to the table, and we really need to do that. Maine is one of the smallest states in the nation. There are smaller, and thank goodness we have 2 congresspeople, but we're small, and we do need to be a net positive on the resource side of federal government. And so I'm going to work with President Trump, and I'll be proud to do it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, we'll see you guys later. Have a great day. Thank you so much.